we are going to start with the agenda. Of course, a brief introduction about ourselves. Then the case for each side, the build versus buy. And then how AI changes the debate, because if you've been playing with it, it really changes the thing. Then how to run an effective evaluation on your specific case. And then some questions and the closing. So you can drop the questions all the time in the chat and Q&A, but like when we finish and even before, if you want, you can raise your hand and maybe open your mic to do the questions directly to our speakers. And without further ado, let's go with the presentation. So I'm going to start myself. So Victor Garcia, the founder of FinOps Quickly. I'm here today to basically moderate and try to control these legends, horses of FinOps, not to derail a lot, and to talk about our main topics here today, because we are going to have a lot of fun on this. And Erik Peterson and Ben Mora. So Erik, if you want to present yourself.
Yeah, fun is the name of the game. I think, going to have a great conversation. So I'm the CTO and founder of Cloud Zero. I've been at this for quite some time here. Cloud Zero was started in 2016, actually. We're coming up on almost 10 years. And wow, has this world, this market changed. And the build versus buy conversation, now more than ever, fantastic. And I couldn't think of a better person to be, better folks to be chatting with than yourself, Victor, and Ben. Like this this couldn't be a better mashup. We're gonna have a lot of fun today.
Yeah, we are going to have a lot. We already had fun preparing this event, and we are probably going to have even more fun today. So Ben, can you introduce yourself to the team?
Yeah, thanks, Victor. So, I guess, hi, everybody, I'm Ben Demora. My main role here is to cause Victor a lot of stress during this conversation. Um, yeah, so I've been involved in this for a really long time. I've used quite a lot of the FinOps tools out there, including Cloud Zero. I've also looked at things like Cloudability, Cloud Health, all these other solutions as well that are in the marketplace. And I've also been involved quite deeply in trying to glue them together and deal with some homemade things as well. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this because there's a lot of this conversation going on, but everything seems to be quite focused on a specific solution or a specific paradigm. And I think that we need to think more broadly than that. So this will be fun.
Mm.
Yeah, yes, indeed. So let me also try to find the questions in case, but one thing. Okay, got it. And then, yeah, sorry, some is popping up on top of things, so it's a bit difficult. Okay, got it over here. Awesome. So let's move forward. Okay, so we are going to start with why people would prefer to build in this, in the first place. For you, Eric, which of these four do you think is the most legitimate reason for people to choose build their own tool versus buying one?
I like the comment that I just saw in the chat here. You forgot the fun. That's probably one of the foundational reasons why perhaps a lot of people build today. It's getting even more exciting as you think about what you can create. We of course have to ask ourselves now in this AI era, just because I can do something, really should I be doing it in the first place? But I wanted to start with something maybe a little bit surprising, maybe a little controversial. And my point of view on this is, of course, I think people should build. Now, why is that? Well, I'm a builder. I created a solution for the market. I was very excited about it. What I would also tell you in the same breath is be ready for the adventure. I mentioned earlier we're into our 10 almost 10 years here at Cloud Zero, and we have nearly 200 people in the organization who are building and creating and working on what is a very complex problem. And I think I am always driven to build, but wow, it is an involved activity. And I got into it all the same reasons. I was actually a consumer of, some of these earlier tools and very frustrated with what I saw, looked at that and said, this isn't going to solve the problem for me. How can I solve this problem? And I did something rather foolish, which is to solve your problems by starting a company. It's definitely not as easy as it looks, but if you can get in there, the fun is definitely a big part of it. But I know, Ben, you've got a really interesting perspective on this as well. We were talking about it earlier when we were kind of thinking about where the conversation would go today. And I want to get your take on this as well.
Yeah, also like solving problems by starting a company. It's kind of swapping problems for a new, an interesting, different
Yes.
set of problems. Um, yeah,
100% true.
absolutely right. So, I mean, yeah, why would you build or buy? I mean, fundamentally, where's your energy going, right? If you consider yourself in your within your organization, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to do? What is your business doing? Are you in the business of building tooling anyway that you sell? And could this just be something else that you would be useful to do for yourselves and for your customers? Great, right? That might be a really good idea. However, like Eric said, right, tread carefully because my goodness me, this is not easy. But if that's not where your energy's going, if you're not going to make any money or gain any benefit commercially from it or anything else like that, why do you want to burn cycles doing that yourself, right? That said, you're never going to find a product on the market that will meet every single one of your needs. So you're going to need to figure out, there will be an element of both, right? But making a decision about where you want to put your energy, I think, is really important, and understanding the need for that too, right? So why do people usually prefer to build? Conversations I've had often, especially since the emergence of AI over the last sort of 6 months or so, tends to be around, well, vendor XYZ wants this amount of money, and we already have this AI service. Why don't we build the AI service and you use that to build it? Never ends well. It never ends well, right? Because the problem is always more complex than you think. Um, there are many reasons, right?
Yeah.
But I think the important thing is what do you want to spend your energy on?
Yeah, what were your priorities? And I think in this, it's easy to say in this AI era, but what does that really mean? It's an era of opportunity where we can almost practically start any project that we might, have been kind of noodling on in the back of our minds, and now it's a prompt away, but your time is still super valuable. The decision you make on what you want to spend your day working on, even if you're running 20 Claude code sessions in your terminal, your time's still very valuable. And there is, I think, something unique about everyone. Everyone has this opportunity now to kind of level up, let AI do maybe some of the toil of our work and promote ourselves into a different role where we get to focus on the things that we're really good at, what we have, leverage our taste, our intuition, our kind of point of view. And it's not always to just go and do the undifferentiated heavy lifting of the world. And honestly, some of this stuff is getting very strategic. If you look at the data, it's very likely, almost certainly, that AI spend is going to eclipse cloud spend. It's going to be the number one thing that people are spending their money on. And that's a unbelievable Wild West. It feels like the first few years of cloud all over again. And we don't even, if we remember back then, like the standards we use today to ingest cost and usage data from cloud providers is we have things like Focus, we have all these other things that have been evolving over time. None of that exists right now in the AI world. So we're spending an enormous amount of time at Cloudera working on that, the formats, and some of it is real, like in the field work where we have to spend tons of time directly with the Anthropics of the world to get at the nitty gritty of behind the APIs and the data formats that we need, because this stuff just doesn't exist. You can't even imagine trying to build this yourself right now, which is kind of part of the fun as well.
Yeah, that's true. I think, AI, like we were talking about this before, like AI opens you a possibility of especially like bringing people that weren't able to code are to now able to code and do their things that they can think of. And also it brings you the for people that were already knowledgeable of coding, being able to do it like in a way faster. I think the problem is like, are you go is it's always about time management. It's like, is this the best that you can do for your business? Is this, the thing that will get you the most business value? Or should you like, I don't know,
Mm.
if your business is a supermarket, should you improve the supply chain system and maybe you can get more money and it's more scalable? There is also questions in the chat. The data validation is also key as well. So there is also a problem about the ingestion of data. Like I always see that AI products and AI things is more about what surrounds AI, like the data, the connections from AI to your system, and all of that. What do you think about the elements that surround AI being problematic on developing these build
Mm.
solutions?
There's
Yeah, go
Well,
for it,
all right.
Ben.
I was gonna say, so Michael Lau's also submitted a question in the Q&A thing too, which is similar, which is everything seems to be focusing around the quality of data, for not just for AI spending, but also just in general. So there's two sides to this. There is the quality of data for AI stuff, right? And whether we're building FinOps tools or whatever else we're building, so there's quality of spend data if over AI spending, but there's also the quality of the data that the AI is able to work with, right? So there's kind of subtly different things. Um, and I think they're both the same issue, which is that there are big areas of like opacity and uncertainty, mostly concerning context, concerning the purpose of the resource usage or the benefit being derived from it, right? Like when we look at the cloud bill, all we see is we see usage. We see a busy VM or a quiet VM. We see a lot of serverless code being pushed or not, but we don't see what the business outcome of that is, what the benefit of that is, what actually is driving what that's driving for our business, right? And in terms of the AI cost and usage data, we don't see which tokens are driving value and which tokens were just a bad prompt, right? Or the wrong model being chosen, or that model not successfully managing to connect to its MCP to drag the data in that time, or whatever else. How many times were retries? Whether there were tooling spun up by the agent that also used tokens that also cost more money, and those tools were chosen by the agent, and they might be a bad choice. So there's a
Yeah,
lot of things that happen that are very opaque that we aren't in control of a lot of the time, that is very difficult to justify why that dollar was spent on that thing and whether that thing should have happened, right? So in terms of to answer Michael's question about that's my concern about that is it's very hard to consistently and clearly say XYZ was spent on this AI service in the bill and we know what we got for it and it was on purpose and it should have happened, right?
yeah,
And then it
yeah.
gets worse if you feed that data back into the AI to ask it to give you some answers about that. It's even more confusing because it may or may not be right.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that element of it. Is it even right? Are these even the right systems to be looking at the data? Uh, I go back to something that I've been, again, often, I'll often surprise prospects or friends, folks I'm talking to when they go, oh, okay, so you're just trying to optimize cost. I actually hate the word cost, right? I never liked this word. I never thought that what Cloud Zero was focused on was about cost or that anyone in this industry really should be focused on cost. To me, it's always been about the value, the output, the outcome, the business, objective. I often like to describe Cloud Zero as the company that exists to help you understand the cost, the value for what you get, for the thing that it is that you do. Right? If you're a business that delivers meals or books travel or processes transactions, well, okay, what's the value back to me? And that's a combination of unit economics and the understanding of your revenue and ultimately your margins. And that helps you understand if you're building a healthy, profitable business. That's the real unlock here. And I think the same thing is true when you think about it from a build versus buy angle, or you think about the data that you're processing. today, early stages, most of the reality is that if you're a cloud provider or you're a AI provider, the metrics you think about first are the ones that are relevant to you. So early days, AWS, you had lots of metrics related to EC2 consumption, vCPUs per hour, et cetera, et cetera. These are infrastructure unit metrics. We see the same thing happening in AI. AI unit metric, infrastructure AI unit metrics like cost per token or model or inference and things like that. That data looks interesting on the screen. Maybe it produces a really pretty chart and you feel, good about it when you look at it. But then you ask yourself the question, well, now how am I going to make a decision to do something different? What change am I going to drive with this information? And you start to realize you can't really drive a lot of change because you can't connect it to the business value. You need to be able to say, well, this AI token spend was used to build this new project. And then this AI token spend was used to maintain and deploy this project. And then this cloud spend was used to serve this project. And you need to be able to connect all of those things together so you get that true TCO, but also true ROI on that project. And that's where this challenge in the cost intelligence, value intelligence world explodes because you suddenly realize I can't solve this problem with just cost data alone. I need telemetry. I need to know what the applications are doing. I need to know what the systems are doing. I need to now know what my users are doing, my developers are doing, and I need to bring that information into the conversation. It almost becomes more important. I think it's actually more important than just the cost data alone.
Mm.
And that explodes this problem immensely. So if you think about build versus buy, you're not just building a Power BI dashboard on top of FinOps focus data. You're actually going to have to do some really heavy math and some very expensive calculations to understand the business value of what you're building.
Yeah, that's totally true. And one thing that I wanted to ask you is like for you, like what could be the most, let's say, most hidden, most difficult cost that is related to building? So like what's the one thing that you'd say like you can see, token cost is fairly easy to like have it and show it with your, you'll get a surprise like at the end of the month or at the end of wherever on your
Yeah.
next recharge. But what do you think is the one hidden, that the one that people are not talking about and you are maybe Eric, you are thinking that is
Yeah.
problematic?
Oh, well, I thought about this very early on. I always think of it in terms of what are the constraints of a system? How do you think about your design? What are the boundaries that can kind of affect the output? And one thing I noticed really early on was something that we're all very aware of, which is, oh, well, if I haven't properly tagged my stuff, I'm not going to be able to see things in a way that makes sense. And what blew me away in the early days of the world, actually still perpetuates today, is that people seem to think this is okay. I don't think it's okay that any investment you make, whether you buy or build, is completely dependent upon this external accuracy, this correctness of this thing that you
Yeah.
ultimately don't control, right? And not only do you not control it, you can put together a tagging policy, but how many of us have worked at an organization that 100% of the time follows through on their tagging policy? How many people have worked at an organization where they acquired another company and have completely different standards they got to somehow merge together? Not only you have like a data quality problem, but you also have a granularity and an accuracy problem because the best way to build is quite honestly multi-tenant systems that can't have tags applied to them in the same way that we would think about it. And so when Cloud Zero was just starting out, we thought really hard about this problem. We said, well, we have to pull this constraint out of the system, and we have to be able to control this. We have to actually be able to function in an environment where we could credibly say, you know what, if you have never tagged a thing ever in your life, you're still going to get immense value out of our product. And that very small decision, kind of crazy decision, informed a design that carried through to today, which had us ultimately build a complete, essentially programming language called cost formation in our product, which lets people get there and define these things. And the complexity behind that is unreal. Um, and it at first it felt overly complex. Like a lot of people said, oh, you can just get by with tags. Now in the AI era, where all you have is just this raw multi-tenant stream of token spend, it's it's a non-starter if you don't have it. It's essential to be able to break this stuff down. And the complexity behind that, it's paying off in spades. But wow, to get there and build around that is, I think, fascinating. But I think most people don't realize the complexity of or it's more importantly the constraint of having a system that is dependent on this thing. Because let's be honest, I think a lot of organizations, maybe they get to 60%, 70% tag coverage. That means
Mhm.
30% of their spend is just going into a black hole or getting, spread around like peanut butter. You can't run a business that way. And technology businesses, this could mean the difference between going out of business or being the next big thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we are going to probably talk about that later, but the deterministic way of doing things with AI, it's tricky.
Mm.
So what do you think, Ben? What do you think is the a hidden hardest to surface cost that we are maybe missing all here?
Yeah, so Eric kind of touched on it, and I want to just dig a little deeper there with regards to complexity, right? Part of the problem that you've got when you build your own solution, whether you're using your AI or whether you're building with engineers, hands on keyboards, whatever, or combination of the two, think about what you're building for, right? You're not building, or you shouldn't just be building something which is going to find which VMs are idle or what storage disks you need to go get rid of because they're orphan. I mean, maybe you need that, but that's not all you need. And it will grow arms and legs and become a monster very quickly, right? Because as soon as you create a world where you are building everything like the not invented here syndrome, right? I spent a very long time at a large IT company who suffered at the time quite a lot from not invented here syndrome.
Mm.
And yeah, you kind of like you everything becomes this behemoth that requires constant feeding and support and love and care. And the complexity grows because it's even more so if you're using more than one cloud, right? What is it? I think at last check, there's something like 2 million SKUs that you can choose from the top three cloud providers now.
Oh, easily.
Something like that. I do know that in the last quarter there were 3,500 new AWS SKUs in one quarter, which is bonkers.
Mm.
And also standard as well, fairly normal for a quarter. That complexity is overwhelming, and as organizations evolve their cloud proposition more and they start to become more cloud native and it looks a lot less like a data center. Please make it look less like a data center, folks. Then eventually your management of that becomes difficult to manage, right? So yeah, that's a hidden cost in terms of not just time, not just money, but also time and risk as well, because you're
Mm.
building multiple houses of cards, right? I'm reminded of that cartoon image where it's got all the different shapes, and at the very, very bottom, there's a tiny little thing, and there's an arrow pointing to Microsoft Excel, and everything's sitting on this one thing, right? Um,
I love that
everything,
chart. I know that one. That is, it's.
yeah,
I mean,
and
the entire internet, everything that we work on in technology is all just a series of edge cases.
yeah, exactly, right. And that's the problem is that you're creating more. When you build your own solution from scratch, you're creating more edge cases and more headaches.
Yeah,
And I
and
think that's a cost, not just a cost in terms of money, but it's a cost in terms of serious risk and in time as well. I love that Max
yeah.
has just provided the link to that image.
Yeah.
Thanks, Max.
That was quick.
Yeah, it was.
Uh, so yeah, one of the things is like I always urge people independently of whether they are, doing it for FinOps or for any other business in the building side. Is like you need to account for the maintenance. So I think a lot of people coming from other like non-developer sides think like, you can develop AI, do the solution, and then will work forever, no maintenance, no nothing. And if you come from like a DevOps side, engineering side, you know that the 90% of the time is maintenance,
Yeah.
issues, something goes wrong. And then you need to fix it. And then nobody wants to fix it because that's a pain to do. And you are doing operations. And that's why companies on the development side have operational side and all that. And for me, that's the most hidden. Like you need to think like once you deploy it and the POC, like now the POC MVP barrier is like zero. But then are you able to maintain it? Are you able to escalate it? Are you able to handle that deployment? Are you able to handle multiple, customers? Then when a customer provides you with an implementation, are you going to be able to handle it? Then know the system that you need to do it. It's like there is a lot to do when you are developing a tool. And you may think like, okay, I'll be able to do this, and like, you need to go through that,
Yeah.
and it's
Well, it's like 90% of the vibe coding ideas I have on the weekend these days, right? You start throwing something together, you get really far really fast, and you start getting really excited about what you're doing. Like, oh yeah, wow, okay, this is cool. And then you realize as you get closer to a place where you're like, all right, well now how do I make this something that goes beyond like something cool on my laptop? And if you've been building software for a long time, you're suddenly reminded of like maybe the kind of like fundamental truths of the universe, which is 80% of the work is the last 20% of the project. And that's true no matter what. You're going to get it deployed, you're going to have to spend a ton of time on that. You're going to need to maintain it. You're going to need to follow through and make sure that it's working. There's something that is going to break somewhere. Werner Vogel said rather famously a long time ago, and I still think of it often, everything breaks everywhere all the time. And that is a kind of a constant truth. And now, on top of that, we have all these new streams of data, all these different, information like formats coming in, and just that point alone is insane. Now, I do believe, we saw the announcement from, I think, a lot of people probably saw what Benioff announced at Salesforce. He talked about headless, and we're having a huge kind of discussion in the industry, of course, about what is SaaS? Is SaaS dead in this new AI world? And Benioff comes out of the gate and says Salesforce is going to be headless, and the future consumer, number one user of Salesforce, is most likely going to be your Claude Cowork or your LLM interfacing through MCP or a CLI directly into your system. And I think that's true for a lot of systems where they have become a system of record, or they've become a system of truth and governance within an organization. And this is where I think it starts to make actual like demonstrable sense for people, if they have an itch to build something, to spend some time building on the presentation side of the information, how that information gets routed, who's going to look at it, how do you look at it, what other systems maybe you need to get that into. And I encourage folks to increasingly think of Cloud as a system to build on top of, right? Let us take a lot of those undifferentiated pieces out of the equation, give you the building blocks, and then build on top of it. And when we launched our MCP interface, and gosh, there's so many cool things coming at FinOps X for the folks who are going to be out there. The ability to build on top of and serve not just people, but agents interacting with the data, that to me is the future. It's going to be probably one of the number one consumers of information. And I think that's where people can get a lot of value if they spend, focus their energies when they have that need to build there. And I know, Ben, you had a take on this. I didn't want to steal your thunder on this because, like, I think you had some really good points about how to combine these. It's not just build versus buy. It's like you had a better term for it.
Yes, I can't even remember what the term was now. So if Victor can, that'd be great. But
I think it was just build and
yeah, it's both, man.
build and
Yeah,
buy and build, right?
yeah, both, right? Like, I mean, okay, I mean, I'll use an analogy because I like to do that kind of thing, right? But like, one of my hobbies is building guitars. Does that mean that I'm gonna wrap the wire around the magnets for every pickup? I mean, I could, but I'm probably not gonna do as good a job as, Fender does. So I'll just buy one because that's that part of my solution that can be done by somebody who is an expert in that thing, and
Mm,
I can include that element that delivers that performance that I want into my overall concept that I want. If I'm building a FinOps tool or suite of solutions within an organization, if I'm solving for a complex multi-LOB organization, and maybe they're using heavy Kubernetes, maybe they're using heavy serverless, maybe they've got they've just acquired a company that's exited a data center and it's all EC2, whatever it is, there's going to be multiple different use cases of what I need to solve for. Now, chances are there won't be a single off-the-shelf solution that will solve every single use case I need. But does that mean I need to go build all of them? Can I go to market and say, right, I need something for this solution, I need something for this solution, and I need them to talk to each other. I need something to make it make sense and give me a single pane of glass and give me what I call my 10-second test, right? Show me a page in 10 seconds. Does it make sense? Do I need to take action, right? If you have
hmm
to log into 9 different tools, that's not going to work. So you're going to need to figure out how you're going to aggregate the insights from these different sources into something. And that might be something else that you buy, or it might be something that you build yourself, whatever. But ultimately, we have to view things in a sort of a component sense. And I think that the best vendors understand that they are a part of a solution.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
I,
important.
I think the SaaS that's dying are the ones that, the companies that where their strategy was built around trying to lock people into their interface and to try to create walls that basically were like, oh, I hate this thing, but there's no other way to do it. Like people are empowered now. That's not going to help them, right? You really have to get at it and think hard about it. Well, what is the actual kind of deep level value I'm providing, and how can I unlock that so that people can build on top of
Hmm.
these foundational components that I'm providing? Because that to me is like part of the essential value. And I go back to all the complexities behind the calculations. Like we're not just bringing data into a single data model and like having a schema, but we're actually doing a lot of very complex math behind the scenes for allocation, attribution, for how decompose a multi-tenant system down to its like transactional components. So you can
Hmm.
say, well, my cost per feature or transaction or widget or something more specific to my business, we deliver meals. What is it cost for our infrastructure to deliver a meal? And now with with that AI conversation in there, what is my engineering team spending to actually build and maintain that feature, that new capability? And gosh, like I have seen people who have started to track this information realize, wow, there is a longer tail than I thought in terms of reclaiming value, because it may have actually been 10x the cost in tokens to build something than it is to serve it. Um,
Hmm.
and gosh, like that's eye-opening for people to realize it, which also gets to the point of like, well, maybe it didn't actually make sense to build this. Maybe I should have just bought this thing in the first place and not spent that money on tokens, vibe coding it on a weekend.
I've
We
already started having conversations with people where they've said that exact thing to me, Eric, where they've been
Mm.
like, the people started building things back in like September, and now they're like, wow, man, I've spent X, I've spent, it was kind of a comfortably 6-figure sum, and I have nothing but a broken thing that kind of does what I needed to do that looks almost exactly like this vendor tool that would cost me a third of that, right? So yeah, building it when something exists already, you have to have a really good reason to build something yourself that is just already there that you can turn on in a week, right? AI or no AI, I don't care, right? If there's something already that has a whole army of people behind it that's been building it and debugging it for ages, and you want to build something that looks just like it, why? Right? But at the same time, if you won't be able to buy something that will do everything, so you're going to need to build some bits, figure out which bits those are going to be, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's true.
there will be unique things to your business that you are better equipped to do, but it's going to be likely in how that data flows within your organization,
Hmm.
drives change, right? We're not just looking at reports or getting data so that we can kind of go, oh, that's a really beautiful graph. No, we want to drive change, right? That was um, always my kind of struggle in my past life, which was working with our engineering team who was spending huge amounts of money, and I wanted them to have this data point so that they could be better at building software. And um, this metric was missing. I love the idea of an OODA loop, an observe, decide, orient, decide, act, and you're building something as a developer and you're going through this loop in your mind, but the metric that was missing was, well, what is this costing and what am I getting for it? Is it valuable? Am I seeing a return on this investment? And that was missing from the developer equation. So it was easy in the early days to say, every engineering decision is a buying decision, but now actually what I think is even more, whether you want to say terrifying or fascinating, I think it's fascinating, is that we're entering in an era where it appears to me that every decision is now a buying decision.
Yeah.
And, when we do research or work on anything, we're not popping this into a Google search or writing a doc and like doing research by hand. Almost universally, we are popping into ChatGPT, going into Claude. So every decision we're making now has in some ways become a buying decision. 25%, 25 cents here go to Claude as part of that decision that I'm making. And that's an amazing thing in itself. That the AI providers have essentially been have entered into a realm where they have monetized thought. You could go down a scary path on that, or you can go down a kind of a fascinating path on that one, because time is money, and if we
Hmm.
play
Yeah.
this right, we are saving time, and therefore we should be getting a return on that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I also think like we every decision that we make, like every if you think of it like on the human resource side, like every second of your salary is bill, right? So you have a bill running on your own for your company, so you need to think about that. And I also wanted to shout out the message that I think Michelle put, that is build to buy, purchase the foundation, build the differentiation. I think it was like quote on that one. I think it very aligns on what we're seeing, right? You use a lot of tools like for anything in your business that doesn't have to be FinOps, that are the foundation of your thing, and then for example your CRM, your ERP are the foundation. Like without that you won't have anything, but you make crazy things to your CRM, the automations, the everything you build on top of that tool. Like you connect that tool to other things and then you build the case for your business. So we need to start thinking about that
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
FinOps. And wanted to ask this question because I think it's very good. That I don't think for Michelle is like maybe for you, Eric, is what are some good questions to ask if you are buying, so for any prospect buyers, to make sure that they'll be able to build these features into their roadmaps. So like
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
how do as coming from the vendor side, what are some good questions to make to you?
Yeah, I mean that's perfect, and I love that build to buy, Michelle. That yeah, like that's going on a laptop sticker somewhere, or who knows what. That is the best way to capture it, and really, I think the best way to think about this, what considerations you should have. as you're thinking about a product, it would be easy to just sit there and look at it and go, well, all right, well, what reports is this solving a problem? I think people need to be thinking first about what can I build on top of this? What are the interfaces? Alongside that, they also should be objectively asking themselves, well, all right, does it have the data to actually make good decisions? Is it coming into the system? Does it have the flexibility to do that? Even if it looks complex, and honestly, what is hard anymore, right? For a while, people would tell me like, okay, you built this language, cost formation, but I have to learn how to program in that. You don't have to do that anymore. Claude is very good at writing this and can instantly get you to where you want to be. So the question is flexibility, extensibility, the ability to build on top of that. Is the data that you need to drive that conversation actually coming into the product? And is it coming in at all different layers of granularity? Your CFO is a consumer of this information. They want to be able to close the books or see the activity at the end of the quarter or get a better sense of, of how they're planning their business on a quarterly, weekly, monthly basis. They're reporting this up to the board. They're actually becoming even more important in the conversation because they are the first ones that the board and CEO are coming to saying, "Hey, I thought we had a budget of $100,000 for AI this year. It looks like we just blew through that in January. And what are we going to do about that?" And the CFO is handling this question today right now, and they need help. Then you've got the people who are the builders, the people who are trying to think about the products, the product managers of the world, trying to think more strategically about where to invest their time, what data is flowing to them. And then, of course, the engineers who are creating this stuff. And they all need data at different granularities and different scopes and information. So you need a system that can apply the right permissions, give the right access, and get down to it. A developer might need real-time data. A CFO might need daily data, and you need a platform that can handle all of that without struggling through the complexities of every format. It has to normalize all that. But start with the thought of, okay, I am going to have to extend this. Does it have an MCP interface? But more than just an MCP, because everyone's going to have an MCP interface. What kinds of questions can I actually answer? Is it efficient? Um, I haven't seen anyone talking about this. We think about it. How efficient is it to actually, in terms of your costs, if you're going to go hook up some vendor's MCP server, how many tokens on average are you spending to have that conversation? Is it efficient? Is it just dumping a ton of data into the context window and hoping for the best? Well, that's going to lead to a lot of hallucination. It's going to lead to a lot of cost, and it's probably not going to lead to a very good outcome as you try to build more and more on top of that.
Yeah, I think that's like super interesting, and I also think that one of the mentions that a lot of people are saying in the chat, and also I wanted to see what was in the Q&A was that a case from Greg that they mentioned that they track AI agent for Cloud Code with the Jira user story to the PR and track the iterations, and then when the PR gets approved, they monitor the quota for the test branch.
Mhm.
That's a huge case, and that's a huge
That's
implementation.
cool. That's
Yeah,
really cool. I like that.
I
Yeah.
wanted
It's a
to
very niche case, but it's good.
no, but I also think that you can like yeah, I also saw like very interesting implementations on the like with Copilot that there were to be, but I think it isn't there. And I think if you are able to track, same that you track the effort that you put in a specific project or a specific initiative in the Jira ticket, like how much hours does that Jira ticket cost you as a human, let's say. It will be good to connect it to how much tokens or how much spend
Yeah,
a Jira ticket consumes, right? I think that's a very interesting point.
that's it. So we're we're able to show that today. That is exactly where this is all going and exactly how we're thinking about the problem that um a lot of people were coming to us saying, I just want to see what models are being used or cost per token. We're like, yeah, but what are you really going to get from that? Like, what's the actual unit of work in your organization? And it's commits, it's PRs, it's Jira tickets, it's and you go one layer up in the business. It might be a project or a business objective or an OKR or a KPI or something for your
Mhm.
organization. If you can't roll it up to those things, then the data just gets lost or never used or more importantly put into action to create change for your business. And that's where the value needs to come from. And
Mm.
I want, every single one of our, customers using our product to be able to see that entire thread. Somebody started building this. It was this developer, then it was this development team, and then it was these Jira tickets, and then it was this PR or these commits, and then that resulted in this thing getting deployed, and then that thing getting deployed then had operational issues and it needed to be resolved, and those things cost money, and there was observability costs associated with that, and those things cost money, and to we need to stitch all of this together if we're going to really understand it. We're still finding applications where people are spending more money on observability than actually serving those applications. And it's very true. We're seeing a lot of people spending more money building them than serving the applications. I mean, all the estimates I think that we see about at what point AI spend eclipses cloud spend, I think they're all not aggressive enough. I think it's actually going to happen way faster than anybody expects. The most aggressive ones say it'll happen in like 3 years. We could be here by next year, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and it's going to be like super interesting how that evolves and how it integrates, in the development process. And I wanted because we didn't have time to go to this slide, but I wanted to also this is one of the things that I've also personally been reflecting a lot is how you make AI, like how do you properly use AI? So we have, AI can do a lot of things. You can talk through it through natural language and it does things, but I don't feel like you don't have a deterministic answer. So the good thing about code is like if you execute it the same thing with the same parameters, it should be the same, more or less the same result, depending if you are creating or you're modifying, etc., etc. But it should be something that you know that will happen. The problem with AI sometimes is like you put the same thing
Yeah.
and the output is different. And
Yeah.
that's something that is not reliable. So how do you see that,
Well,
maybe Eric, on how how it works for you guys?
yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. I've seen so many fast attempts at an MCP server that were just a different interface on top of existing APIs. And the idea being that we're just going to dump a ton of data into the context window for the LLM, and it'll figure it out. And for toy problems and tiny little environments, you test that, you go, oh, this works great. And then you get into a real environment where you've got trying to look at 12 months of spend for a company that's spending, let's say $500 million. This is not happening in your LLM. You have to have a strategy for how you build these interfaces that rely on deterministic tools that bring back the right amount of data that then give the LM the best chance of success at an actionable, accurate result. And that doesn't mean dumping a year's worth of what looks like a giant wall of numbers into the context window and asking the LM to figure it out. It means that we have to respond with our own insights, our own data points, our own summarization, our own deterministic data points that then are as compact as possible so they fit into that conversation. Because you're not going to just want to bring in data from your cloud spend or AI spend or something else. The real unlock is when you start to connect that with all this other data. So you have to make room, not just for your own information, you have to make room for the other business context. Maybe you want to bring in your revenue per customer, or you want to bring in the kind of future costs for a new project that you're planning, or other elements, so you can start to model out that. And if you're just packing the context window with a ton of numerical data, garbage, the data might have been accurate when it was delivered, but it will turn to garbage almost instantly once you kind of put it into this giant mixing pot inside of Claude on your desktop or however you're going about it.
It's a really important point to make, Eric, as well. Like, every time you do something to your data source, you risk poisoning it. Every time you put your source of truth through another step or into something else, you risk causing issues. And if you don't fully understand every element, every aspect of what you're about to put that data set through, or you don't know that it's safe to do so, then you can't trust anything beyond that point,
Yeah.
right? So if you're going to build that versus you buy that, I mean, it depends on the data set, right? But if it's cloud or AI spending, it's probably going to be better off to do something that's already been researched thoroughly and developed over time. What you do afterwards, once that data has had its normalization and clarity and all the other good stuff happen to it, if you want to segment that out and start producing funky graphs and conversational AI agents that can talk to you or tell you a story about what happened in your Kubernetes environment using human language, because Kubernetes does not speak human language. Great, right? I beat on Kubernetes all the time because my goodness me. Yeah,
Oh,
but like
it's a target rich environment. I do the same.
the guy that invented Kubernetes said that it is not necessary in most of the environments that it is used. Um, anyway, so like if you wanna take your source of truth and segment that out and start using it in ways that make sense with your own bespoke flavors and views and perspectives for the CFO, for the engineering team, for the product team, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
Great, cool. But you be careful about what you decide to do with that source of truth.
Yeah,
Because once it's
yeah.
poisoned, anything beyond that point is bad.
I mean, how many of us have like at some point just said, "Oh, let me just throw my spreadsheet into Claude and see what happens," and then
Badness happens.
surprise, it's terrifying a little bit. Now, um, it 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 gets complicated. So you have to not just be making the data available. You actually have to be working on tools that your MCP server is working with, validators, things that if you're taking input back in, you don't just blindly accept anything. You go, no, 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 let me validate this actually, and have a process in this system that says, well, all right, I'm going to sanity check this because you cannot trust the you know you can't take it to the bank what you get for the LM if you don't build some validation steps around that. It's amazingly powerful when you combine those things together though. Um,
Mm.
and you have beautiful data, beautiful answers to your questions, and then the confidence that behind the scenes the numbers have been validated, right? That they've been that some deterministic system has figured it out.
Yeah, I also I love that idea that the power that AI gives you, processing information, like when you are able to segment it and you are able to get that, like the amount of the possibilities to get insights and to get information from that huge amount of tabular data that sometimes is like amazing to very difficult to process. And wanted to move to the takeaways that we can take here. So the determinism thing, I think it's super important, as I mentioned, like being able to have predictable outputs. Also, building what we said, the phrase from Michelle about buy to build. I think that going to stick. From what you buy, then you try to move forward and trying to implement the case, like as in any other tool that think of your CRM, think of your ERP. You build on top of that, you work with that, and you embed it into your business, and not wait for that to happen. You just work with what the provider does. It normally has APIs have been there for quite some
Hmm.
time, and MCPs and APIs are basically kind of something very 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 similar. So definitely leverage those, and try to also evaluate, as we mentioned, the points that Eric made about the questions that you should be asking to whenever you are approaching that decision. And think of the cost that you're going to have,
Yeah.
both on the human resource, on the server resource, and on the token. That's now the new thing. Like the AI spend that you're going to have to build this. It's not only the
Yeah.
hourly cost from people, and then
Well,
focus.
Jensen Huang said he's going to be upset if his developers don't spend half of their salary in tokens by the end of the year, right? So let's see how that works out.
Yeah, that's a lot of salary though.
Yeah, 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 and
um,
and we got to focus. Like I think we started there, but it's good to come back there, which is like, well, what is it that we do here, and am I focused on it? Am I picking the right things to work on? Am I staying strategic? The fact that I can now create anything is probably the most dangerous thing on the planet because it means I could spend my day reinventing every wheel that has ever been built, if I really wanted
It's
to.
like it's like from Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility, right? You got to be careful with
Uncle
that.
Ben.
That quote just gets better. Yeah, Uncle Ben, there we go.
Oh no, please don't do that to me.
That's gonna be a sticker. There we go. All right, we
No,
got a
it's
Oh,
couple
not.
stickers
that's
No,
made.
it's
awesome.
Yeah.
definitely not.
That's was freaking
Perfect.
awesome, Ben. That was amazing.
Oh, Ben.
Uh, I think that's
Yeah.
probably the best way to like lead up to the Q&A. Sorry, I'm crying because that was hilarious. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
I am
I
going to
think we're
die.
good. I
I
think we're
know
good.
this is too good. This has been, I mean, I
Nah.
really enjoy this conversation, Victor. Thank you for leading this and man, this is you can't get us together and not have fun with this. And I hope everyone who joined us today had fun with this. And I'm going to be out at FinOps X. You're going to be out there too, Ben, right?
I'll be
So
there too. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going
yeah,
to be great.
Yeah,
I can't
I
wait to
have to
meet.
say that I'm going to be there as well. So
Yay!
Yes.
I'll see you all there. I'll be doing stuff over there. So if anyone wants to chat as well, well, the three of us will be. So you are open to
Yeah.
chat with everyone.
Yeah. And in this conversation around value, we're going to hit this really hard. We've got I'm doing a session with Rick LaFar from DraftKings. We're going to be talking about value and the last cloud bill. And I would love to see everybody there as well, joining in the conversation. But FinOpsX is such an amazing community. The talk tracks in the hallway is always
Mm,
the best, and I hope to see everyone there in June.
awesome.
Awesome. So thanks Ben, and thanks Eric for being here today. I think I had a lot of fun, and it was super interesting topic. A lot of people joined today, so thanks everyone who joined. And see you all and FinOpsec, and hope you got a lot of value from our chat. And see you in our next webinar and probably on FinOpsec. Okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
Cheers
that's
all. All the
all.
best.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.